Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great honor for me to be in Accra and to speak to the representatives of the people of Ghana. I am deeply grateful for the welcome that I've received, as are Michelle and Malia and Sasha Obama. Ghana's history is rich, the ties between our two countries are strong. And I am proud that this is my first visit to Sub-Saharan Africa as President of the United States of America. I want to thank Madam Speaker and all the members of the House of Representatives for hosting us today. I want to thank President Mills for his outstanding leadership. To the former Presidents Jerry Rawlings, former President Kufuor Vice President. Chief Justice, thanks to all of you for your extraordinary hospitality and the wonderful institutions that you've built here in Ghana. I'm speaking to you at the end of a long trip. I began in Russia for a summit between two great powers. I traveled to Italy for a meeting of the world's leading economies. And I've come here to Ghana for a simple reason: the 21st century will be shaped by what? Happens not just in Rome or Moscow or Washington, but by what happens in Accra, as well. This is the simple truth of a time when the boundaries between people are overwhelmed by our connections. Your prosperity can expand America's prosperity. Your health and security can contribute to the world's health and security. And the strength of your democracy can help advance human rights for people everywhere. So I do not see the countries and peoples of Africa as a world apart, I see Africa as a fundamental part of. our interconnected world as partners with America on behalf of the future we want for all of our children. That partnership must be grounded in mutual responsibility and mutual respect. And that is what I want to speak with you about today. We must start from the simple premise that Africa's future is up to Africans. I say this knowing full well the tragic past that has sometimes haunted this part of the world. After all, I have the blood of Africa within me. And my family's own story encompasses both the tragedies and triumphs of the larger African story. Some you know my grandfather was a cook for the British in Kenya. And though he was a respected elder in his village, his employers called him boy for much of his life. He was on the periphery of Kenya's liberation struggles. But he was still imprisoned briefly during repressive times. In his life, colonialism wasn't simply the creation of unnatural borders or unfair. Terms of trade it was something experienced personally, day after day, year after year. My father grew up herding goats in a tiny village. An impossible distance away from the American universities where he would come to get an education. He came of age at a moment of extraordinary promise for Africa. The struggles of his own father's generation were giving birth to new nations, beginning right here in Ghana. Africans were educating and asserting themselves in new ways, and history was on the move. But despite the progress that has been made, and there has been considerable progress, In many parts of Africa we also know that much of that promise has yet to be fulfilled. Countries like Kenya had a per capita economy larger than South Korea's when I was born. They have badly been outpaced. Disease and conflict have ravaged parts of the African continent. In many places, the hope of my father's generation gave way to cynicism, even despair. Now, it's easy to point fingers and to pin the blame of these problems on others. Yes, a colonial map that made little sense helped to breed conflict. The West has often approached Africa as a patron or a source of resources rather than a partner. But the West is not responsible for the destruction of the Zimbabwean economy over the last decade. Or wars in which children are enlisted as combatants. In my father's life, it was partly tribalism and patronage and nepotism in an independent Kenya that for a long stretch derailed his career. And we know that this kind of corruption is still a daily fact of life for far too many. Now, we know that's also not the whole story. Here in Ghana, you show us a face of Africa that is too often overlooked by a world that sees only tragedy or a need for charity. The people of Ghana have worked hard to put democracy on a firmer footing. With repeated peaceful transfers of power even in the wake of closely contested elections. And by the way, can I say that for that the minority deserves as much credit as the majority. And with improved governance and an emerging civil society, Ghana's economy has shown impressive rates of growth. This progress may lack the drama of 20th century liberation struggles. But make no mistake, it will ultimately be more significant. For just as it is important to emerge from the control of other nations, it is even more important to build one's own nation. So I believe that this moment is just as promising for Ghana and for Africa. As the moment when my father came of age and new nations were being born. This is a new moment of great promise. Only this time, we've learned that it will not be giants. Like Nkrumah and Kenyatta who will determine Africa's future. Instead, it will be you, the men and women in Ghana's parliament, the people you represent. It will be the young people brimming with talent and energy and hope who can claim the future that so many in previous generations never realized. Now, to realize that promise, we must first recognize the fundamental truth that you have given life to in Ghana. Development depends on good governance. As for America and the West, our commitment must be measured by more than just the dollars we spend. I've pledged substantial increases in our foreign assistance. Which is in Africa's interests and America's interests. But the true sign of success is not whether we are a source of perpetual aid that helps people. Scrape by, it's whether we are partners in building the capacity for transformational change. This mutual responsibility must be the foundation of our partnership. And today, I'll focus on 4 areas that are critical to the future of Africa and the entire developing world. democracy, opportunity, health, and the peaceful resolution of conflict. First, we must support strong and sustainable democratic governments. As I said in Cairo, each nation gives life to democracy in its own way. And in line with its own traditions. But history offers a clear verdict: governments that respect the will of their own people. That govern by consent and not coercion, are more prosperous. They are more stable, and more successful than governments that do not. This is about more than just holding elections. It's also about what happens between elections. Repression can take many forms, and too many nations, even those that have elections. Are plagued by problems that condemn their people to poverty. No country is going to create wealth if its leaders exploit the economy to enrich. Themselves, or if police can be bought off by drug traffickers. No business wants to invest in a place where the government schemes 20% off the top, or the head of the port authority is corrupt. No person wants to live in a society where the rule of law gives way to the rule of brutality and bribery. That is not democracy, that is tyranny, even if occasionally you sprinkle an election in there. And now is the time for that style of governance to end. In the 21st century, capable, reliable, and transparent institutions are the key to success. Strong parliaments. Honest police forces, independent judges, an independent press, a vibrant private sector, a civil society. Those are the things that give life to democracy, because that is what matters in people's everyday lives. Now, time and again, Ghanaians have chosen constitutional rule over autocracy. And shown a democratic spirit that allows the energy of your people to break through. We see that in leaders who accept defeat graciously, the fact that President Mills opponents were standing beside him last night to greet me when I came off the plane spoke volumes about Ghana. Victors who resist calls to wield power against the opposition in unfair ways. We see that spirit in courageous journalists like Anas Aramea Anas, who risked his life to report the truth. We see it in police like Patience Key, who helped prosecute the first human trafficker in Ghana. We see it in the young people who are speaking up against patronage, and participating in the political process. Across Africa, we've seen countless examples of people taking control of their destiny. And making change from the bottom up. We saw it in Kenya, where civil society and business came together to help stop post-election violence. We saw it in South Africa, where over 3/4 of the country voted in the recent election, the fourth since the end of apartheid. We saw it in Zimbabwe, where the election support network braved brutal repression. To stand up for the principle that a person's vote is their sacred right. Now, make no mistake, history is on the side of these brave Africans. Not with those who use coups or change constitutions to stay in power. Africa doesn't need strong men, it needs strong institutions.